The Hare Krishna Temple in Moscow. A dream is becoming reality.
The city of Moscow. Not long ago, it used to be known as the capital of an enormous empire of atheism, one of the main freezers of the Cold War. But in the beginning of the 90s, the world, as we knew it then, changed drastically.
Spirituality, dormant in the former Soviet Union for decades, started sprouting back to life. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, an outstanding Indian philosopher and saint, contributed significantly to the spiritual revival when he visited Moscow in 1971 with the unique message of Lord Krishna.
Some years passed, his preaching fructified into a first Russian temple of Lord Krishna in Moscow, which was soon to become an important center of Russian spiritual reform. But the history of Hinduism in Russia has been far from being idyllic. First, Russian devotees of Krishna had to face a lot of trials for their faith. Prabhupada's visit to Moscow was soon followed by an unprecedented state campaign of religious persecution. 20 years ago, Krishna devotees were officially declared enemies of the Soviet nation.
Dozens of them were arrested and thrown in jails and psychic asylums, all just for their unwillingness to give up faith in God.
3 of them died of unbearable tortures in prisons. In fact, it was a real war launched by the totalitarian state against a handful of bold devotees of Krishna in Russia. People from all around the world voiced their strong protest against the persecution campaign. But it was not until 1988, with the rising tide of perestroika, that the prisoners of conscience in Russia were finally released from jails and labor camps and rehabilitated. The same year, the first association of Russian followers of Krishna was officially registered in Moscow. Now officially restored in their rightful worship, Russian devotees of Krishna acquired this two-storied half-a-century-old building. Old and broken down, the building was long back considered unsuitable for living and was planned for demolition. Despite it, devotees themselves started working hard to restore the building from within and without, and finally turned it into a first regular Hindu temple in Moscow, Shri Shri Dayal Nitai Shachi Sutta Mandir. Up to this day, the temple remains to be the heart of spirituality for many thousands of Krishna followers in Russia. By distributing free food to the needy, Krishna devotees helped many Russians to survive through the difficult post-perestroika years when starvation was not uncommon among civilians. At that time, Krishna Temple in Moscow became headquarters of a nationwide humanitarian effort called Hare Krishna Food for Life. For a few years of operation, Hare Krishna volunteers managed to hand out over 5 million hot vegetarian meals, mostly in emergency and war areas of Armenia, Abkhazia, Chechnya. Moscow Temple became instrumental in collecting donations of food and money, recruiting volunteers and organizing Food for Life on-site emergency relief programs. Moscow Temple also became a center of production and distribution of the ancient Vedic literature in the former Soviet Union, with over 11 million books of Vedic knowledge distributed to date. Krishna Temple is now one of the famous sites of the Russian capital, with hundreds of school children from all over the city visiting it every week on excursions. Here they get a first-hand experience of the ancient Vedic culture. get to taste exotic Indian sweets and learn a few dance steps. The Indian community of Moscow now cannot think themselves without the temple, which provides for their spiritual needs. Over 150 people daily attend services in temple hall of 1500 square feet. However, on Sundays and gala occasions, the temple is literally bursting with visitors, usually numbering over 1,000 and exceeding 3,000 on such major Hindu celebrations as Krishna Janmashtami. To accommodate all guests, in summertime, temple authorities have to convert local parking lot into a huge makeshift tent, pandal, enough to seat 800 people at a time. This is Radha Damodar Das, formerly a scientific research officer, professor in a prestigious college and a state prize winner. For his interest in Hinduism, he was sentenced for a few years of labor camps under the communist regime. Now, he is the director for Vaishnava education in Russia. Government officials and scholars visit the temple to get acquainted with the ancient spiritual tradition of the Vedas. The president of Krishna Consciousness Temple of Moscow, Shyam Das Adhikari, speaks. We trust that someday Krishna will arrange for a new beautiful temple and cultural center. This is a most cherished dream of many followers of Vedic spirituality and culture in Russia. It will be constructed in line with the traditional Vedic architecture and will undoubtedly become a landmark of the city. So far, in a multicultural capital of Russia, there are many beautiful churches, mosques and synagogues. A magnificent Hindu temple is yet to come.